rather than doing a whole long explanation of the context, very simply, Krishna's already wound up his pastimes in Vrindavan. He wound up his pastimes in Vrindavan by visiting there. We discussed it a little bit yesterday evening. He visited there for 2 months. In the topic of Gopal Chambu. He visited for 2 months, and there were discussions every day at the house of Nanda Maharaj about Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. Krishna wound up his pastimes in Vrindavan. The Prakat Leela was withdrawn into the Aprakat stage. Krishna went to Dwarka for the purpose of winding up his pastimes in Dwarka, which meant the associates had to also be withdrawn, etc. The whole of Dwarka sank into the sea. So before that happened, the stage was set. The Brahmanas cursed the Yadu dynasty that the offense made by Samba would be the result of the destruction of the entire Yadu dynasty. It was Krishna's plan, because he wanted that to be withdrawn. And the demigods came to Dwarka, understanding that Krishna is now going to depart. They offered their prayers. They thanked him profusely for fulfilling his promise to diminish the burden of the earth of the demoniac kings. You've fulfilled that promise. If you wish, you may now return to your abode. And they left. So Krishna is alone somewhere in his palace, in many palaces in Dwarka. And Uddhava came, knowing Krishna is going to, because he knew. He was so close to Krishna, he knew Krishna is going to leave. So he appealed to him, take me with you. I can't bear separation. And he then also asked a question that took 4.5 chapters to give a full response to. How to overcome attachment. So that, because attachment's an obstacle for knowing you and seeing you and understanding you, please give me instructions whereby I can overcome undue attachment to family life and temporary everything. So Jnana Vairagya is 4.5 chapters without the detail. It's a lot of back and forth. And at the end of that, Uddhava, the end of chapter 10, Uddhava asks a question. You're indicating that, well, it's not at the end of chapter 10. You're indicating that devotion to you is the culmination of knowledge and detachment. So, but I'm not detached, I'm attached. So what to do? I'm paraphrasing. So Krishna explains, just serve me and fix your mind upon me. And if you can't, one who cannot do that, there's 2 recommendations. Work with detachment, offering the results of work to me. And second, hear about me, my activities, my loving dealings, and my form, and hear about me. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, the bhakti process or Bhagavad Dharma process, Krishna is indicating. Then he goes kind of back and forth between one who's not there yet, the mixed devotee, and the one that's the pure devotee. So Uddhava asks, what kind of devotee will you accept the results of their service from? What's the qualification of such a person? And those who are so qualified, how do they regard the process of serving you? Two questions. There's a long verse where Krishna gives 30 qualities of one who is his devotee. And the final is the pure devotee. The not yet pure devotee has so many qualities, and so many, the few qualities are those that are pure devotees. And the one who's a pure devotee, then the explanation is the mind becomes pure, and the mind can then be fixed upon me. Conversely, if the mind is not pure, the mind can't be fixed upon me, because there's distraction and color. The mind is colored by fruitive intention and the modes of nature, and one can't understand Krishna properly. So in text 21, it's continuing along that theme. I'm going to read text 21. My dear Uddhava, if you are not able to free your mind from material disturbance and thus absorb it completely on the spiritual platform, then perform all your activities as an offering to me without trying to enjoy the fruits. That was 21. 22, here's 21. Coming to this conclusion of all knowledge, one should give up the false conception of material variety that one imposes upon the soul, and thus cease one's material existence. The mind should be fixed on me, since I am all-pervading. And then 22 you just heard. If you are not able to free your mind from all material disturbance, and thus absorb it completely on the spiritual platform, then perform all your activities as an offering to me without trying to enjoy the fruit. So back and forth between mixed and unmixed. Unmixed, and if you're not there yet, here's what you should do. So this is 21. The reference is Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur's commentary that includes this verse while he's speaking from Kapila Dev's teachings to Devahuti. And what Kapila Dev says, it's 329:15. The mind should be purified by following varnashram duties, so that's your prescribed duties, offered to Hari, or Daivi Varnashram. Same. Approved by previous devotees, without desire for results, and which are favorable for bhakti, and by always performing powerful Pancharatrika deity worship with best choice of items and without unnecessary violence. And then the commentary. Now the angas or components of bhakti are described, because chapter 29 is one of the chapters, Kapila Dev's teachings, where he's speaking. At the beginning of chapter 29, follows chapter 28, there's a question by Devahuti. Bhakti is pure. Is it possible that one can be involved in the modes of nature and still be engaged in bhakti? And Kapila Dev says, sure, bhakti is pure, but one who's in this mode, that mode, the other mode, and then unmixed bhakti, their bhakti looks like this. Bhakti is pure, one's consciousness may not be. So now he's describing how to get to pure consciousness, similar to what Krishna is doing in Uddhava Gita. Now the angas or components of bhakti are described. The mind is purified by executing varnashram duties approved by the previous pure devotees, which was one of Uddhava's questions. What's that kind of bhakti or offerings unto you that's approved by those who are perfect? Same. without expectation of results, which means offering the results to Vishnu or Krishna. However, it should be understood that one should follow the rules of Smriti or Varnashram for purity of body, cloth, and utensils by earth, water, and other agents without mantra, which are suitable for bhakti processes like archana. Otherwise, if one were to follow all aspects of Varnashram, statements such as the following would be meaningless. And he then, this is now Vishwanath referring to chapter 25, which is also devotional service. Mai chananya bhavina bhaktim kurvanti ye dridham. They perform steady bhakti to me with exclusive devotion, giving up all actions to attain me, giving up friends and relatives. And then this verse 11:11:32, not 22. A person who, understanding good and bad aspects of Dharma as taught by me, gives up all his duties and simply worships me as the best of all. That's, the karma sannyas for those who are so qualified. The mind is purified by the process of pancharatrika puja, or kriya yogena, considering what is best in terms of place, etc. Shastena. One should follow the process without excessive violence. It is understood from this statement that there is no harm in destroying leaves, roots, and fruit, and small living entities which are hard to avoid or hard to see, in preparing various food for the deity, cleaning the temple, and applying decorations on the floors. Then he goes to, or these quotes go to Canto 7, Chapter 15. This is Narada explaining who he was before he was Narada, before he was Narada. Long ago, in another lifetime, a Brahma existed as a Gandharva known as Upabarhana and was respected by other Gandharvas. And commentary. The devotees will act as the Lord instructs after attaining bhakti through fortunate association with other devotees. This instruction is the essence of the scriptures. In this is 11:11:32, same chapter. A devotee who, understanding good and bad aspects of Dharma, as taught by me, gives up all his duties and simply worships me as the best of all. And also in Uddhava Gita, chapter 18, the Lord says, a person fixed in jnana and detached from external objects, or my devotee who is detached even from the desire for liberation, both should reject the ashram duties based on external rituals or paraphernalia and conduct themselves beyond the range of rules. So this is a very elevated state. It's the karma sannyas state. The same idea, as you know, it's in chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita. There's Dhyan yoga or Ashtanga yoga that's recommended for those that are not yet, they don't have the adhikar to give up their prescribed duties, and so it's recommended they perform their prescribed duties and begin the Ashtanga yoga process. And through the Ashtanga yoga process, of course, and hearing about Krishna. That's you just add that to this chapter in the Bhagavatam. But the mind becomes cleansed by prescribed duties offered to Vishnu and the Ashtanga Yoga process. So we don't follow the Ashtanga Yoga process, we follow the Bhakti process. But it can take one to that position. It's very difficult, practically impossible in this age, but that process can take one to the position where the mind is pure. There's no disturbance in the mind being attracted or repulsed by matter and, different this or that, the other configuration of matter, including, people's kind speech, people's harsh speech. The mind is not moved. When that stage is reached, then one may enter into the karma sannyas stage. Chapter 6, Bhagavad Gita discusses here in chapter 11 of Uddhava Gita, same idea. Just more detail, the graduate study of Bhagavad Gita. Thus, the devotees, taking instruction of the Lord as proof, do not depend on the rules of varnashram conduct. Nard explains this in terms of his previous birth in 5 verses. Again, this 11:21 that we've just read is referenced in Canto 10, Chapter 29. It's the beginning. Chapter 29 is the beginning of the Gopi, the rasa section of the Bhagavatam. The highest religious duty for a woman is to sincerely serve her husband, behave well towards her husband's family, and take good care of her children. Commentary. The Gopis reply, quote, "But if we, as you say, have great love for you, then why are you repeatedly telling us to return home? It is not possible for one who is the loving subject to give up the person who is the object of that love." Krishna. It is true that you are full of affection, but I must speak to uphold religious principles. Therefore, please listen as I advise you according to the scriptures. Serving the husband with complete steadiness is the wife's supreme duty, paradharma. You should also serve the husband's parents. Paragraph. The alternate meaning is as follows. Krishna. For you, the beautiful women of Braja, serving the husband is not your duty. It is others' duty, paradharma. For the scriptures say, 7:15-12, vidharma paradharmascha abhasa upama chalaha, etc. There are 5 branches of irreligion. Vidharma, irreligion. Religious principles for which one is unfit, paradharma. Pretentious religion, abhasa. 4. Analogical religion, upadharma. And cheating religion, chala dharma. One who is aware of real religious life must abandon these 5 as irreligious. 7:15-12. Now this verse. Since I am Vishnu, and you are all Vaishnavas, worshipping me alone is your proper religious duty. This is Krishna to the gopis. The gopis speaking to Krishna, Krishna responding to the gopis. Anything else is simply irreligious, paradharma, and therefore not your duty. According to the verse 11:11:32, the best activity is to give up all other duties, dharmas, and worship me. Now, this is um, one way to understand. There's different ways to understand. But one way to understand the 1866 Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mame Kam Sharanam Vraja. No one has to be qualified to do the karma sannyas, simply dedicate to Krishna platform. There's other ways to understand that verse, but this is one of those ways to understand the verse. Continuing, this 11:11:21 is referenced in a later chapter of Uddhava Gita, chapter 20, text number 9. (11:29). As long as one does not become detached from daily and periodic duties, or has not awakened faith in hearing topics about me, one must perform one's prescribed duties of varnashram. Now, it's a major part of Uddhava Gita to speak about, and from different angles and perspectives, the value having faith in the hearing and chanting process. And there's significant verses that are repeated over and over again in commentary. For that to awaken requires mercy of one who has such attraction. And it's described, the verse that's, the word that's used in that verse is yadrich chaya. Yadrich chaya means somehow or other, or there's no material cause, or the causeless mercy of a devotee. By the causeless mercy of such a devotee, like what Prabhupada did, traveling around the world, giving his association to people he didn't even know, and just causeless mercy. Now, the cause was the instruction of his spiritual master, but he did lots of things other than that. It was his compassion, and the nature of a Vaishnava is they're compassionate. There's no cause for that compassion. It's their nature. And so causelessly, they go here and there, and causelessly, they awaken, as same thing that happened for all of us, Prabhupada or the followers of Prabhupada, just hearing the topics of Krishna, and attraction awakens. And when that attraction awakens, then there's degrees of faith in that process. And the degrees of faith have everything to do, one of the criteria in considering degrees of faith is how much attachment one has to the temporary. Doing duties in relation to the temporary, according to the codes of Dharma, is for everybody, except those that are in this very, very elevated stage, very, very elevated stage, where you have no affinity for anything temporary. Someone can say something very nice, and someone can say something very harsh, and the mind doesn't move. Like Maharaj Ambarish. Mind doesn't move, etc. Then one can give up worldly duties, and if till that point, at that very, very elevated stage comes, perform worldly duties according to the varnashram standards. And the varnashram standards require that you're civilized. Civilized, what does that mean? It means that there's A and B. You understand the higher value and purpose of life, and B, there's characteristics that represent one who understands those higher values and purpose of life. In order to even enter into the varnashram properly executed, you have to become human. That's in Narada's teachings in Canto 7, Chapter 11. Very nice section. So, It is natural that the overly attached jiva is qualified for karma. When will he become qualified for gyan or bhakti? He should perform his daily and prescribed and periodic duties, karmani, as long as he has not purified his heart by karmas and become detached. Thus he becomes qualified for gyan, which was the first 4.5 chapters of Krishna's instructions to Uddhava. Focus has not yet gone in those sections to bhakti. It's just purification through now, gyan. And one who can't assimilate then has to do prescribed duties so they can assimilate gyan. The mind has to become purified to that extent. That one can actually understand, Brahmabhuta. Prasanatma nasochati nakangsati samaksarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. Then pure devotional service begins. Until then, it's not yet pure devotional service because we haven't yet really understood who we are. And so the preliminary is needed. It's needed. We don't go, we followers of our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, which means we're followers of Bhagavad Gita and the teachings of our predecessor Acharyas, we don't do Ashtanga Yoga and, Karma Yoga, mix the two and we begin with Bhakti immediately in the sadhana stage. And the saving grace especially is the holy name and hearing the topics of Krishna, which is filled with the holy name. Krishna, 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 in the pastimes and activities of Krishna. That's the recommendation in Uddhava Gita. When you're not there yet, you don't have the mind that's purified, do your prescribed duties, varnashram duties, as the previous souls recommend, offer the results to Krishna and hear about me. Bhakti has entered into this discussion. Those of you that like to read Prabhupada's books, you know way back, the very first instruction that Shukadeva Goswami gives in response to Maharaj Parikshit's question, what's the duty of a man who's about to die? And what's that subject matter that he should hear, chant, and always remember? There's 3 chapters, Canto 2, Chapter 1, 2, and 3. And it's universal form, Paramatma, change of heart, devotional service. In each of those chapters, even if it's meditate on the universal form, it's hear about me, hear about the personality of Godhead. Hear about the personality of Godhead, hear about the person. So it's universal. The Bhagavad Dharma process, that's universal. So we're getting in Uddhava Gita kind of a graduate study look at this topic. And it's very detailed. I mean, graduate level is detailed. So people that aren't at the graduate level may just get confused and go back and study Bhagavad Gita so the foundation is there. But the details it's like the question last night of, Prabhupada said, just chant Hare Krishna and go back to Godhead. And then we hear all these other things that you got to do to go back to Godhead. Like, chant where the mind is pure, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's qualifying. There's nothing wrong with that first statement. There's nothing wrong with just chant Hare Krishna and go back to Godhead and follow the regular principles, go back to Godhead. But then you unpack the chant Hare Krishna. What does chanting Hare Krishna really mean? What does going back to Godhead really mean? Etc. So graduate study gives refinement and further detail. It doesn't change the initial statement. It's qualifying the initial statement or embellishing or expanding that initial statement. So I'll read that sentence again. He should perform. It is natural that the overly attached jiva is qualified for karma. When will he become qualified for gyan and bhakti? Answer. He should perform his daily and periodic duties, karmani, as long as he has not purified his heart by karmas and become detached. Thus, he'll become qualified for gyan. That was stated in verse 7 of this chapter 11. Or he should continue his karmas until faith in the topics of the Lord arises by sudden mercy of devotees. Before that faith, he was qualified only for karma. When faith appears, as explained in the previous verse, he becomes qualified only for bhakti and is no longer qualified for karma. No, it doesn't mean you stop doing duties in a proper manner. Just the focus upon doing them to become detached, so you can nishkam karma. You can not be implicated in the karmic bondage of doing even prescribed duties, because prescribed duties have karmic bondage. Good activity has bondage for good result. But when there's faith in the hearing and chanting, then that obligation is no longer there. The aspiration isn't the same. The consciousness has become elevated. How? Mercy of devotees that encourage and nurture faith in hearing the topics of Krishna. That's Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. Before that faith, he was qualified only for karma. When faith appears, as explained in the previous verse, he becomes qualified only for bhakti and no longer is qualified for karma. This faith should be exclusive. The person has firm faith that he will reach perfection by hearing about the Lord, not by karma or gyan. This arises only by association with pure devotees. It is said, the Shruti and Smriti literatures are to be understood as my injunctions, and one who violates such codes is to be understood as violating my will and thus opposing me. Although such a person may claim to be my devotee, he is not actually a Vaishnav. The reference of where that's from doesn't show here. Thus, the devotee does not disobey the Lord's order. Rather, when he develops faith, he will never disobey the orders of the Lord. Some persons say that even if he does not obtain the mercy of great devotees, and consequently does not develop that faith, on seeing the excellence of other devotees, meaning not great devotees, he gives up karma and takes up worship of the Lord following his orders. Others say that since Shruti and Smriti recommend bhakti, not varnashram, a person understanding this takes to bhakti. Even if he does not meet the greatest devotees, for the Lord says, quote, this is 11:11:32, a person who, understanding good and bad aspects of Dharma, as taught by me, gives up all his duties and simply worships me, is the best of all. Paragraph. Devotees may think that, as devotees following purely, it is not necessary to follow injunctions and prohibitions in Shruti and Smriti, such as vows like Ekadasi and forbidden acts like putting coconut water in a bell metal vessel, or putting yogurt or milk in a copper vessel, or eating the Lord's offering before offering to the Lord. However, understanding that the Shruti and Smriti are the Lord's order, they follow those instructions for a different reason. than those that don't have that faith follow those instructions. Paragraph. Some pure devotees in the East, because of the pressure from karmis with which they have close contact, may perform karmas. But this is not actually performance of karma because it is done without faith in those acts. The Lord says, Bhagavad Gita 17:28, O son of Pritha, whatever is offered in the fire, whatever is given in charity, whatever is undertaken as austerity, but which is done without faith, is called asat, since it bears no result now or in the next life. Of course, that's a different translation than Prabhupada's, but 17:28 Bhagavad Gita. One more for this morning. This 11:11, again, at the end, I'm going to show, there's a nice slide. I'm show on the screen. Again, in Uddhava Gita 11:21-2. Being fixed according to one's qualification is a good quality. And to be fixed in something not of one's qualification is a bad quality. This is how good and bad are determined. In other words, don't perform another's duty even if you do it better, perfectly. Perform your duty. Or, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says it in a different way. It's the same message, but what is it? Someone is here. Someone is here and someone is way up there. So the duties of someone here is whatever it is. And doing according to your position, that's good. And then when you've graduated to there, you do what's to be done by the person that's there, not before and not subsequent. And when you're there, you do what's the topmost, you do the topmost. That's good. But if you imitate the topmost, that's not good. That's Krishna speaking in Uddhava Gita, chapter 21, text 2. So, commentary, again, this is Vishwanath. Question. I asked you what a good quality is and what a bad quality is. You answered, that it is a fault to see good and bad in the devotees, and a good quality not to see good and bad in them. I have this doubt. If someone has faith in your topics and is qualified for pure bhakti, but by fate falls under the control of karmis and gyanis, follows them, and performs karma distasteful as drinking medicine, or practices gyan, is seeing fault in his bhakti bad, and not seeing fault as a good quality. Moreover, if someone, a karmi or gyani, does not obtain complete faith in bhakti, since he does not obtain mercy of great devotees, but by seeing the excellence of a devotee, gives up his duties according to his qualification, with a desire to attain such excellence, and begins worshipping the Lord, and announced that he is a devotee. Should one see good qualities or bad qualities in that impostor, a cheater of the world? That was a long question. Vishwanath, please hear about the nature of good and bad qualities. The gyani, fixed in his qualification for gyan, and the karmi, fixed in his qualification for karma, are approved as good. However, because both cannot give their results by themselves, karma and gyan must be performed with a mixture of bhakti. Otherwise, it does not give any result. 1.5.12 Bhagavatam Naishkarmyam api achuta bhava varjitam nishobhate jnanam alam niranjanam. Nice verse. This is Narada's instruction to Vyasa. 1.5.12. Even the stage of Gyan, without the bondage of karma, if devoid of bhakti to the Supreme Lord, is not glorious. Paragraph. On the other hand, being fixed in bhakti, as is done by the Shuddha Bhakta, is a good quality, since bhakti has the power to give its own result. Bhakti should not be performed with any mixture of karma or gyan, since those processes cannot give independent results anyway. And then this 11.11.32. Dharman satyajya sarvan. A person who, understanding good and bad aspects of Dharma as taught by me, gives up all his duties and simply worships me, is the best of all. Then again, 11.20.31. Therefore, devotee engaged in bhakti with mind fixed on me, the cultivation of knowledge and renunciation is generally not beneficial for bhakti. So this whole, there's one more sentence. This whole discussion is about it's the mind. Making the mind qualified to be fixed on Krishna. You know, the distracted mind. So people ask that question, how do I, my chanting is very distracted, and when I'm doing my service, I'm distracted. And so how do I get, it's laid out in detail. In detail. However, this is me commenting, devotees kind of want a quick fix. They don't want to go through the arduous endeavor to come qualified. I mean, it's not. There is an arduous endeavor. It's not just chant Hare Krishna and follow the regular principles and go back to Godhead. I mean, that's true. Then there's some qualification for how you chant Hare Krishna. And then from chanting the other services that you do in the way that you regard yourself, the way that you regard material nature, the way that you regard work. So there are steps and stages in making the mind qualified to be fixed on Krishna. And we should know what our stage is, and we should know what to do based upon our stage and act accordingly. And this Uddhava Gita is filled with it. It goes back and forth and details and commentary and comparing this and that. So it's the roadmap is very clear. We can't be lazy or complacent. We just chant Hare Krishna, follow regular principles, and bingo. Not a mechanical process. It's a devotional process, which means becoming submissive to Krishna. And submissive to Krishna means his teachings. And we take the teachings in our heart and we live by them. That's the application part. Another question from yesterday. If it's in your heart, you'll live by it. If it's not in your heart, you'll sometimes not. So how do you bring it in your heart? It's submission to to Krishna through the teacher of Krishna's message, and then the teaching that comes from the teacher that's Krishna's message. It's submission, pranipat. Last sentence. By this, it is understood that if there is a mixture of karma or gyan, pure bhakti disappears. To be fixed in the opposite, someone else's qualification, is fault. This is how good and bad are determined. It's a little confusing sometimes for devotees who don't understand the standard. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavat yakinchana sar vair ganesh tatra samasute sara haraba bhakta shukuto mahadgana. Celebrated verse in the Bhagavatam, just a little anecdotal story. Some years ago, being very inspired by what Burijan had created, the pioneer Burijan created Vrindavan Institute for Higher Education. I taught in it for several years. I really liked what it was, what its results were. And so I experimented coming to America and trying the Gita Institute for Higher Education. Didn't last too long. We did it for a week, and then it lasted a little bit, and then it did it for 3 days, and then it started becoming just the Gita retreat. But it started with the Gita Institute. So I went there one time ahead, and Sureshwar Prabhu, Prabhupada's disciple, some of you may know Sureshwar Prabhu, very nice devotee. Sureshwar Prabhu is the one who goes around and gives this seminar on Prabhupada. He's like, anyway. So when he gave class on that verse, and his purport was, well, it's not really like that. I go here and there doing Food for Life and around the countryside, and there's lots of good people. Jayadvaita Maharaj came the next morning. He didn't know that verse had already been spoken on, and he said, there's no good qualities. But what does that mean? So what's good? What's a good quality? And anything that's sat, it's sat. And it's something that comes and goes as asat. So that's how he spoke. Now here, yet there's another refinement of what's good. Depending upon what your position is, that's good. You follow what is prescribed for somebody at a particular stage. So it's important that you understand what your stage is and what's appropriate for you at your stage. And it's there in the Bhagavatam. You can't be complacent or lazy. You have to read and be properly oriented to Krishna, to understand I have faith in Krishna and Krishna's words. That's where I'm going. And then, but I don't have complete fixed mind. I'm not at the non-dual position yet. I'm still influenced by attraction and repulsion for duality. I feel good when people appreciate me, and I don't feel good when people harass me. And it happens. Whatever your stage and position is, it happens. There's duality in this world, just the nature of the place. So when you're beyond that, then you're ready for another stage of bhakti. And you're not there, you're ready for some other stage of bhakti. But it's not that bhakti is now. It's either you're a pure devotee, or you're garbage, or you're not a devotee. It's just stages of bhakti. And the criterion for stages of bhakti, according to this section, is having faith in the topics of Krishna, meaning the teachings of Krishna, the pastimes of Krishna, the qualities of Krishna, etc., etc. And then there's different levels of affinity for the temporary, which is the topic how this whole Uddhava Gita started. How did Krishna, Uddhava to Krishna, please, you see this nice painting. He's at Krishna's feet, clutching Krishna's feet. Please give me the instructions so I can be free from undue attachment to the temporary, because it's blocking my ability to see and understand you properly. That's us. And lots of teachings in stages and stages. It's refinement of the bhakti process. Whoops. Went away. There we go. What happened? Oh, you took it away. You took it away because there was that gobbly noise. Yeah. Didn't read this morning because I went on to further. Because of ignorance, however, some of them go backward or stop along the way, foolishly thinking that their journey is finished, when in fact they are suspended in one of the minor potencies of the Supreme Lord. If one wants to ultimately understand the nature of the absolute truth, one must take to the path of love of Godhead. You know, this is really, this whole Uddhava Gita is really helpful for those who are card-carrying, I use this phrase lately, card-carrying members of I'm Not There Yet Club. I'm here, the goal is there, and I'm not there yet. And now, what's you know, the how-to question, how to get from where I am to where I want to go, or how to overcome the obstacles from where I am to where I want to go. And Uddhava Gita gives all of that. It's not different than Bhagavad Gita. As you heard a few references, it's not different than Kapila Dev's teachings to Devahuti, same on devotional service, and other places in the Bhagavatam. Because, you know, the theme is the same, and the way in which that theme is presented is variegated, but the principles don't change. And to see how it's expressed here and how it's expressed there, it helps clarify, at least to get the right concept, the right understanding. And it's not over yet. We still have to apply ourselves with submission unto Krishna and to reach that goal. And, you know, internalize Shrinvanti Gayanti Grananti Sadavaha. Bring it within the heart and live accordingly. So let's see if there's some discussion. 7:30. We went for a whole hour. Yeah.
Guru Maharaj, today morning when we started the discussion, we were hearing twice in the beginning that when one is following Pancharatrika Vidhi,
When? Panchatrika Vidya.
one should try to avoid violence.
You heard the explanation. What does that mean?
Okay, that's the explanation.
Yeah. You know, when you're crushing spices, you may be harming living entities that are connected to those spices. Crush the spices. Because that's not unnecessary violence. Or you're cooking, and there's living entities that may be, you know, singed by the flame of cooking to make offerings to the deity. Cook anyway. It's because that's not necessary, but that's not unnecessary violence. That's the meaning. You're picking leaves and, you know.
Sure, I have one more.
Okay.
Not from today's, but
Okay.
in the paradigm of that the senses are that the senses are superior to the dull matter, that and the intelligence is superior to the senses, mind is superior to the
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that paradigm, is the heart referring to the mind or the soul?
Is the heart connected to the mind or the intelligence? That's
Or
your
the
question?
soul?
This is a common question, and my response is going to be, I have heard different explanations from different persons, and they're all nice. Some say the heart means the soul. Some say the heart means the mind. Like, Cheta Darpana Marjanam. Cheta, what's Cheta? It's consciousness. That's the soul. But it's also translated as mind. So, mainly you should understand that hierarchy consideration. It's all resting upon the soul, and the this and that and the other are from more subtle to more gross forms. It's the orientation of the soul that's the ultimate principle. And when the ultimate principle, that is the orientation of the soul towards Krishna, whatever that is, that's going to determine the configuration of the mind and the intelligence, you can say also the heart. So like this, Shrinvanti Gayanti Grananti, it means accepting or bring within. But bring within, you can say, that's the heart. And it's more subtle than the mind. It's like, but that's resting upon the soul. So the heart is, the seat of your orientation towards something, the object of the senses, the proper utility of the senses, the mind's orientation, the intelligence giving direction to the mind. My understanding is it has everything to do, the heart has everything to do with where your consciousness is. And ultimately it's resting upon your orientation towards Krishna. That's a free will choice, that's the soul level. And when that's right, when that's not right, then the heart's orientation is not right, and the intelligence orientation is, everything is skewed. That's my understanding in response to what heart means. But if things are correct at the soul's regard for Krishna level, then the other kind of heart understandings are going to be aligned properly. Sachinandan Swami has a different explanation, which is fine. I like his phrase very much, the alignment terminology, the body, mind, and heart, the three gates, and it takes you to Krishna. So his explanation is different than what I just said, which is fine.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Anyone else? Yeah.
Maharaj, we hear that in your class, perform your prescribed duties according to Varnashrama tradition.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, most of us are not following any particular Varnashrama arrangement, in the sense we all go to work and work for somebody.
Okay. Well, that doesn't mean you're not following Varnashram.
Okay. So our prescribed...
Ashram is there and Varna is also there. I mean, the structure is there's a boss.
Mm.
And the boss is the one who you're accountable to. But for one who's practicing Daivi Varnashram, it's not the boss that you're accountable to. That's the heart's orientation.
Okay.
And, according to one's nature. So you're not a construction worker, you're a whatever you are. So whatever you would say what that is, that's according to nature. Now, it may not be exactly according to nature, it may be according to necessity.
Mm.
That's not really what your nature is, but then you're not going to be fully satisfied because it's not really according to your nature. And so submission when the heart's submission to Daivi Varnashram, then adjustments will be made, intentionally and otherwise, in course of time. I just heard this. I was listening last couple of days to really a fantastic interview during the Chaitanya Charitamrita interview series given by Kripamoya Prabhu. He's a profound person. So one of the things he said was he learned a lot from his travel to South India. One of the things that he mentioned was he visited 2 formal gurukulas where the boys get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and after they take their cold bath, they do sandhyavanam, and they do this and that, and they do their puja, and they, by memory, they recite the Upanishads and this and that. Then they, fast in the morning, they have lunch, and then in the afternoon he visited, and one over here is studying architecture, and the other over there is studying computer science. And he was like, wait a minute, this is Gurukul. This is traditional Gurukul. And they looked at him like, you don't understand. We're not going to be doing this forever. We have to prepare for our adult life, and these are the occupations that suit us. And we're, and young boys learning these skills. And that's not the permanent situation, doing some work, but it's part of the other stages of Varnashram. And so you can look at, your particular occupation. The Varna is there, and the ashram is there, and the Varna is there. And it may not have been selected according to what these young boys are doing. It's one studying architecture and the other studying computer science. But, it's a stage of life, and so it's a whole social commentary on how young people select their career. I mean, what you did, young people today, my experience is, they think a lot about their career. And they're not thinking in the same terms as what, the people sitting in the room were probably thinking when they selected their career. Like, where am I going to be able to make some money and have a standard of living that's blah, 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 blah. And these young people are not thinking along those same standards. It's not easy for them to understand, but they're thinking a lot about what's my nature and how to evaluate it. I mean, I've had lots of discussions with young people about that. So it's certainly a big mix. It's not so formal as you can say during Vedic times. It's a big mix of a lot of things. The ashram is more defined, and Varna is less defined in terms of standard, but they're directional types of things. So rather than going into that whole discussion, whatever it is that you do, that the principle doesn't change. The verse that we just cited from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, in Yad Karoshi Yadasnasi. So that's, you do that. With the result goes to Krishna, and you're not meant to be the enjoyer of the results that are going to Krishna, nor how people are nice or not nice. And people may say, somebody may say, you're doing a good job, or you're not doing a good job. In the workplace or in the devotee community. It's one who's doing this properly to become qualified to let go of the necessity to purify the mind in that way, what we're hearing in this section. That's something to aim for. Aim for being beyond duality and beyond a sense of possessiveness. And get to the stage where the possessiveness is possessive of Krishna. Mamata, the phrase that's used over and over in the stage of the Brijbasis. We're being prepared for Brijbasi life eternally. So offer the results to Krishna. Anything else? You have something?
Thank you again, Maharaj.
Mask, it'll be easier to hear you.
Okay. Thank you again. So last night in the discussion, you said we can learn and know so many things, but application is really important. And this morning, when you were speaking about the, yoga ladder and stages of life, I was thinking how a lot of times I know the standard that I want, like as my goal for when I'm practicing devotional service. And then
You're
a
not
lot
there
of
yet.
times life, I'm the card-carrying member of the I'm Not There Yet club.
That was your question last night.
Yeah.
It's not the same, but something like that.
Yeah, and I was thinking specifically, like I started worshiping Tulsi every morning in my house and keeping that, to have a Tulsi puja in the morning. And some mornings, life fills in and, the clock is going. I have to pack a lunch for my daughter. And so I'm singing the prayers while packing a lunch and, offer my incense, but I want to finish the song, right? And so I'm singing while I'm packing her lunch. And, and then I go back and circumambulate and offer the water to Tulsi. And I'm just thinking, like, it feels like I'll never reach that. Not never, but I'm on my way to reaching a better.
That's your question last night.
But is it offensive to Tulsi if I'm?
No. It's not. It's flawed,
It's very flawed.
but it's not offensive. Especially, is Tulsi accepting that flawed devotion? Yes. Don't stop there.
Yeah.
May that stage come in my life where I'm not multi-processing.
Yeah.
Meditate on the meaning and the meaning of the prayer.
Yeah.
Please grant me a spiritual